Hello and welcome to episode number 41 of the Wedding Business Podcast. I am absolutely beyond excited today because we have Harriet Flather, supremo harpist and member of the WBC, joining us. Harriet, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
We've just talked for context. We've just talked for about 20 minutes off air, and then thought, hang on, this would make really good podcast material. So we had to then press record. So here we are. I'm so excited to have you here, Harriet. I know a lot of club members listening will know who you are because you're a very active and very valuable member of the club. But for those listening who don't know who you are, tell us a bit about you.
So I am a professional harpist. I work under Harriet Flather musician. And I also in the pandemic decided to start a marketing business, which is currently rebranding as I Do Social. So I do social media management for wedding businesses.
Yay! So let's take a step back to the very beginning. How did you get into, first of all, playing a harp? Is that like a childhood thing? Did you pick up a harp age 5? How did that happen?
No, so I've always played an instrument. So I started with piano and then clarinet, saxophone, and then I saw a picture of a harp at school and thought it was pretty. And so I went home and was like, Mum, I want to play the harp. And she said no, but then took me to a harp concert where this woman walked out in this white sparkly dress and I was like, I just want to be you. And I had like a little taster lesson the next day and I just took to it. And I was really lucky that there was a harp teacher locally who I could learn with. And actually that harpist I saw originally is now a really good friend and ended up teaching me like 10 years later.
Oh, wow.
But there came a point when I was about 16 when I had to decide clarinet or harp, which to pursue. And I actually chose the clarinet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I went off to university, studied clarinet intensively for 4 years. Then at the end of that, had a really bad performance experience and I wanted to sell my instruments like I never wanted to play again. And it was actually when I moved home, my godmother offered me, well, she said, would you play the harp at my son's wedding? And I said yes, never having played at a wedding before. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It was like the perfect English country wedding, like a lovely church. And then we went over to the pub next door for drinks and like there was a cricket game going on the village green. Like it was so quintessential. It was amazing. And from there I just was like, yeah, this is what I want to do.
I imagine the harp is a really hard instrument to learn. Is that, I mean, I think people assume that because it's just so big and I don't know how you know which thing you're pinging. Not like a guitar, you've got 6 or whatever it is. A harp, you've suddenly got loads more. How does that work?
Yeah, we have 47 strings. Wow. So they are color coded, which helps. So like all the red strings are C, all the black strings are F. But the hard thing is the technique because it is so unlike any other instrument, and it's also a very unnatural position to be putting your body in. And it takes quite a while when you're learning to find a comfortable position. And it's different for everybody. And it depends on what harp you're playing and your posture and the size of the harp and your hands and all sorts of things. So it's hard to learn. It's also really hard to teach as well.
Variables galore. It's also,
yes.
At weddings, when I've seen the harpist arrive, I always feel so sorry. Like it's such a massive case and it's like on wheels and dragging it into like really awkward corners of churches and venues. So I imagine to make that choice for it to be your life is you've got to really love it.
Yeah, they don't tell you about all the like moving the harp around and the big car that you'll need and all that kind of thing. Actually, that first wedding I did, the door for the church was about 4 foot. So I had to squat while moving the harp back, while trying not to drop it. It was, I felt like I'd done a workout after that.
It's baptism of fire.
Yeah, definitely. It is awkward to move, but it's one of those things like once you get the hang of it, it's fine. And it is also easier than it looks, definitely.
So that first wedding, and until that point, had you ever even considered it being, the harp being, you know, your your job? Had you considered weddings? Had the thought popped into your head, oh, this would be nice to do this at a wedding? How did you?
Never. I'd always known I'd be a professional musician.
Okay.
But I always assumed that would be on the clarinet, and I have actually now come back to playing that, and I'm doing concerts and things, but it's a very different audience. But with the harp, I think I just fell in love with that first wedding, and I was asked to learn 3 very difficult pieces, and the joy that I saw that gave, particularly Becca, the bride, was just amazing. And I actually think of her every single time I play those now, because I know I learned them for their wedding. And there was something as well about it being my godmother and her family, and that was really special. But it's the same actually, any wedding I do now. If I've learned a song for a particular couple, I always think of them when I play it.
Nice.
Or think of their venue, or just there's something wrapped up in the music.
Yeah.
But no, I never thought that this would be my career, but I love it.
How did you go from doing a wedding kind of as a favour to this is going to be my business now?
Well, I don't think I thought about it as a business for quite a few years. I just thought about it as something I kind of did to make money, which sounds really awful and clinical. But I was teaching a lot as well, and I had like an admin job, and it was kind of something I did on the weekend. But what I really enjoyed about it was the getting dressed up, the being part of someone's day. And it was actually wedding fairs where I started to think, okay, there's a little bit more to this than just turning up at the venue and playing for someone.
Yeah.
And I remember my first wedding fair, it was 4 hours, and I thought, right, I have to play for those 4 hours. And I think I played for like 3.5, and I was so tired. And I had one inquiry, and she said, yes, she wanted to book. She never paid her deposit. So like that as a first experience of having a proper like inquiry form and booking, and it was horrible.
Ouch. Yeah, and that didn't put you off. You carried on.
No, because I had other wedding fairs lined up, and I think I've always had this kind of resilience about me, and I've just gone, well, just get on with it. I don't hang about.
I think you have to. And wedding fairs are a really good example of it. I remember, in fact, I remember one particular wedding fair, because I used to love them as well. I just think there's a lovely atmosphere, a nice vibe. You get to meet new faces. And there was this one in particular, and I felt like every supplier there just wanted to tell me the industry's dead. It's super those people at wedding shows. It's so competitive. You're never going to make any money. You'll never be able to leave your full-time. I've been in this for 5 years. You're new, and you'll never be able to leave a full-time job. And it's quite, as an empath, it's quite hard not to adopt that way of thinking, isn't it? When you're surrounded by people saying it's not possible. Did you experience that? And how did you, put on your big girl pants and go, actually, that's not me. I'm made of stronger stuff.
I think I was always quite lucky in that I was the only harpist at the wedding fair.
Yeah.
So I was immediately unique, and people would ask me questions. But I did experience people like that, and they would generally complain about weddings and couples, and I'd be like, well, why are you doing this then? If you don't love it, like, at least look happy. I think actually I've always thought of being at a wedding fair as a performance, because you've got to put on like I'm selling, yay, buy from me face. And there's people who stand there and they look like they'd just rather be in bed. I mean, I'm like, what are you doing here then? Yeah. The industry is so alive and so exciting, and we don't need people like that, because they just bring it down for all of us.
I couldn't agree more. I was saying to someone recently that to work in the wedding industry, you have to, yes, it's okay if you're ambitious and you've got ideas of grandeur for your business, and I love that, and I think that's necessary to get you through the difficult times, but it's a very selfless choice. There are so many other industries you could go into which would be all about you. And when you're in the wedding industry, ultimately you are a member of a team that's helping someone have the best day of their lives. And if you don't appreciate that, I think that's where a lot of people come unstuck.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's 2 common misconceptions from the outside of the industry, which is that I hate it when people say, oh, people hear wedding and they just put zeros on the end of the price. Well, it's not true, because yes, it might be more expensive, but you're not just buying the services for a day, you're buying the expertise, the effort, the time, everything.
Yeah.
And the other thing is this thing of, oh, well, it's just saturated. There's not enough room for us all. Well, it's not true at all. Everybody has a different client and a different way of doing things. And I mean, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of couples get married in the world every year. Millions of couples get married every year, but they all need someone for their wedding.
Yeah.
And here we all are. And I think we have to work really hard in the industry to combat that, not only to combat those opinions that come in from the outside, but also not to take them on ourselves.
Yeah, agreed. I think that's so true. And you know, talking about relationships and building strong relationships, it goes both ways, doesn't it? It's really important to have that network of other suppliers and people to lift you up and give you good advice, but also relationships with your customer and that connection point, which is just so important. That's how people take you seriously as a supplier. That's how people give you creative freedom. That's how people trust you to make the investment in, you know, but having a harpist when actually originally that wasn't on the budget.
Yeah, and it's a people game.
Yeah,
absolutely. And you are dealing in the most intimate, romantic, important day of this couple's relationship, and unless you're invested in that to some degree, they're just going to see through you. Absolutely. I mean, I've just been this morning writing Christmas cards to all my couples. Like, I love sending cards. I send them an anniversary card, a wedding card, a Christmas card, and it's just something, it costs me nothing. Well, not nothing, quite a little bit, but it's, you know, it's something I really enjoy doing.
That's so
and
nice.
They all appreciate it.
Yeah.
And it's just that little touch that it goes beyond the day itself.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. So going back to when couples come into your world, who are the people that you're like, I will take your booking, you're perfect for me? How do you work that out? How do you know? And how do you know when it's a red flag?
So I have a field on my inquiry form that is the only one that I don't mark as required, which is tell me about the style and theme of your wedding. And if they don't fill that in, that's a red flag. Because I think, okay, you don't really know what you want your day to be like. You don't know why you want me. Whereas if they fill it in and it's like country, rustic, traditional, loads of flowers, I'm like, yes, sign me up. And that's exactly what my wedding's going to be like. And I think, you know, my wedding is going to be a mixture of everything I've seen that I've loved, and I'm just shoving it all into one day.
Amazing.
But it's all that. It's, yeah, if it's in the countryside particularly, I love flowers, fresh flowers, and the atmosphere. And also if they say something like, we want a harp to create an atmosphere for our guests, I'm like, yes, you just read that on my website.
Yeah, it's pretty basic actually when you think about like building relationships. It's basically a dance, isn't it, where you mirror each other's behaviors, you talk a similar language. And I think the inquiry process is really important part of that, because you're so right. If somebody can't, it's either they don't know, so they haven't thought about it, or they just can't be bothered. And, you know, I'm not here to slate anyone, but, you know, personally, if I receive an inquiry and somebody just can't be bothered to fill in my inquiry form, I'm like, I just don't know that this is going to be a great relationship. I don't know that we're going to go places.
It's such a two-way thing, and especially with music, actually, because, you know, I've got to ask them to really think, what do you want on your day? I give them suggestions, but actually it's down to them. And again, if they, you know, it's fine if for like the signing of the register, people often say, just play what you like, we're not worried about that. That's fine. But if they can't think of a song they want to come down the aisle to, I'm like, come on, there must be something.
I'd struggle to whittle it down to one, or whittle it down to one that I'm not going to cry at.
Yeah.
When you did your COVID classics, which was just genius, Harriet, me and the kids loved COVID classics. I would so often be sat there a blubbing mess because music just has that power, doesn't it? And you know, specifically talking about relationships, if you've had an experience around a song with a family member or a friend, or I don't know, it's just got the power to ignite things.
Yeah, That's very true. I always say to people at wedding fairs, if I make people cry, I've done my job.
Yeah. And all the photographers are like, yes, cry. It makes me So let's talk about you and your experience of building relationships in the wedding industry. What have you done? Because I know you, Harriet, and I see you, doing exactly this within the club. How have you done it? What's been important to you? And why is it important that you have those relationships?
I've always been quite a bubbly person, and like I said, with the wedding fairs, it's a performance, and I'm also good at just kind of going, right, it's time to make friends. Let's go out there. And I remember at that first wedding fair I did, there was a woman whose stand was opposite mine, and I think she was a milliner. Yeah, and I went over to her and I said, this is my first wedding fair, I don't really know what I'm doing. And she said, this is my first one too. And we were like, oh yay, we're in a club together. And just that kind of thing of saying, actually, I don't really know what I'm doing, and not going, hi, what do you do? Just being a human and open. And I mean, one of my closest friends in the wedding industry, I met her because we were at a wedding fair and the coffee, like the free coffee, was not good. And her husband, who helps her on wedding fairs, like came past my stand and he said, no, don't have that. Shall I buy you one? I was like, oh, that'd be lovely. Thank you. So then I got chatting to them and we just started talking about coffee, and then we started talking about lots of other things. And now we're really good friends. And she brings her own coffee machine to wedding fairs now.
He sounds like my kind of person.
Oh yeah, she's great. She's a photographer actually as well. But yeah, it's just about being human. I think there's a difference between interacting with your couples, who you do need to sell to, let's be honest, and people in the wedding industry, because you already have that commonality. You already have that thing where you can both say, oh, this fair's a bit slow, or God, isn't it amazing today? I've hardly got time to breathe, and you have that straight away. You've got a shared experience without even having to say anything. That was why the Wedding Business Club Live was so good, because we all just were there for the same reason. It was fantastic.
We'll talk about that in a bit. So have you always found people to be receptive of wanting to build a network? Because I didn't. Like, going back to the beginning, and we said this before, didn't we? One of the reasons that I started the club was that I really wanted to change the landscape on how people work together within our industry, because I think we're all on the same team. Even if we do exactly the same thing to the same niche, I believe very strongly that we're all on the same team. And I found in some situations that people were quite guarded early on, and didn't want to share ideas, didn't want to join together and get together. And I always found that really sad, because I was always absolutely positive that everyone could win. Have you found that generally people are receptive to you wanting to build that network?
Yeah, I have actually. The people that I have found I haven't wanted to build a network with are those who will give you your card, give you their card, and then not ask anything about you. You think, okay, you don't want to build a network, you just want me to put your name out there.
Yeah.
But the people who are genuine about it, you build a friendship.
Yeah.
Even if you don't like go out for coffee or whatever, you build a friendship where at those wedding fairs, at weddings, you know who they are. And I think it's very easy for us, people who generally work on our own, to feel isolated and lonely.
Yeah.
But then when we go to a wedding and we recognize faces and like, oh, I saw you, whatever, and it's like being in an office in a team, and it's just brilliant. And I have always found people to be receptive, and if they haven't been receptive, they are generally patronizing, in which case I just say, okay, I don't want to be available for that, and I walk away.
Yeah, good for you. What are your like do's and don'ts then when it comes to for want of a better expression, but building a network? That always feels so corporate-y, that word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I hate the word networking. It feels like I am here to network. It's so serious.
I'm imagining grey suits and an unpleasant room and bad coffee when I think of networking, but
and those flip chart things.
Yeah, the flip chart. Gotta love a flip chart. So what are your do's and don'ts when it comes to building industry friendships?
Smile at everybody, because you never know who is in the room.
Yeah.
Remember that everyone is a potential client. Even if they are a makeup artist, their daughter might be getting married. You never ever know. And try everything once. Try every kind of wedding fair, because you don't know who will be there. It could be that your intention for a wedding fair is not to get 10 inquiries, it's just to make 2 new connections.
Yeah.
And that is just as valuable in the long run as inquiries are.
Yeah.
And I think my don'ts are, it's really easy to say, but don't be frightened.
Yeah.
Like, just try and be open, because there will be someone in that room who feels exactly the same as you. And it's probably easier to spot them with their body language, or if they're not really engaging with people, just go and have a chat. And if that's them, if they're quiet, that's fine.
Yeah.
But just go for it. You have to put yourself out there. It's so much easier said than done. And I know I did struggle with it at the beginning, but now I'm just bounce into the room and I'm like, hello, I'm here.
Yeah. And it's not easy, is it? When you think, you know, if you imagine being back at day one of running your business and not knowing anyone and actually having doubt about your ability. I mean, maybe not for you as a harpist, but you know, in the early days of me being a photographer, I actually had doubt about my ability as a photographer and doubt about my ability as a business owner. And it's quite hard, isn't it, to find that confidence that is probably a little buried. Did you struggle with that? Did you have moments where you were like, I can't do this. This is just so out of my comfort zone?
Absolutely. That first wedding bell, I think about it all the time. It was upstairs and I didn't even think to ask, is there a lift? Like, before I signed up to it. And then I got there and luckily, yes, there was a lift. But I didn't even think about parking. And actually, those are the stressful things for me about a wedding with the harp, is all the logistics.
Yeah.
Like, are there steps? Is there a lift? Can I park close to the door? All those things. And it's that gives me the kind of butterflies. But no, when I started out, my repertoire was so classical, because that's what I've been trained in. And it took me a while to realise I could play other stuff. And that was what people wanted.
Yeah.
They wanted the pop songs and things. So yeah, in those early days, I definitely doubted whether anybody would want a harpist or want me in particular. And I thought I was too expensive. And I was charging absolutely pittance for my services. And yeah, just steadily, that as you get more inquiries and you, I think also as you get comfortable with what you're doing, I mean, even now, if I have a break of a couple of weeks without a wedding, I go to one and I need a checklist.
Yeah.
Because I'm just out of the practice. But then if I've got a week where I've got 3 or 4, I'm like, yep, easy, let's do it, let's carry on. And it's, you know, we all have those little doubts and niggles, but at the beginning it's so easy, but you just have to keep plugging away.
Yeah. Patience and consistency, for sure.
Yes.
I know you've heard me say it a million times. It's so true, isn't it? Because like, this is a long game. When you start a business in the wedding industry, it's a long game. Like, our sales cycle is much slower than so many other industries. I remember a few years ago, I met a chap who came to me for some advice, and his expectations of what was possible were just so unrealistic. And I hadn't fully thought about that prior, but you know, it was March and he wanted to start his wedding photography business and finish the year out on a fully booked year, which for him was going to be 30 weddings. And I can see how people might think from the outside that could be possible, but actually it takes a while to bed in, doesn't it? And build those relationships and, you know, cut your teeth and get into good habits and practice and juggle all of those balls that we have to juggle as wedding business owners. There's so much more to it. It's so different than any other industry I can think of.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to have, I mean, the most basic system for organising all my paperwork. And now I think I'm like, well, I printed everything out for starters. Like, why did I do that? Yes. So that I would carry it with me. Because I often get the question, oh, well, we're all settled up, aren't we? And I would be ready to like produce their receipt. Like, why would I need to do that? And just, it was kind of just, I was so nervous of getting something wrong that I just covered my back. Whereas now it's just so much more streamlined. But it is hard, and it's hard to remember everything. And I think you have to I mean, it's taken me a long time to learn this, but you have to take a step back and say, okay, is everything actually working? No. Where's it not working? Okay, what can we do to fix that? And I find once you start fixing that tiny thing, you want to then fix everything, because you realize, oh, actually that's still not working. And and I know that my business doesn't run as like beautifully and as automated as I would like it to, but I'm happy with it at the moment, and until I get a real niggle, I won't change it. I think you have to do what works for you as well, and what works for your client as well, because they have to have absolute trust in not just your abilities to perform in whatever capacity on the day, but that they can trust you in the whole process. I think that's actually more important in some ways.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. What advice would you give to someone who's at day one? Let's imagine someone has woken up today, has listened to this podcast and thought, I would like to start a business in the wedding industry. What would you say to them?
Actually, the first thing I would say is think about if you really want to. Yeah. Because it is a lot of hard work, and it's a lot, as we've just said, a lot more work than people realise. And you have to really, really love weddings to want to do it. Yeah. I feel like I know the civil ceremony in Rutland off by heart now. But that's fine, and that's what comes with it. That's one of the bits that isn't so fun. But the fun bit is seeing the first kiss and be like, oh, now I get to play again. And they've just got married. Yeah. And I think that would be my first question, is because I think the wedding industry and the events industry can often be a bit muddled. And I think when people say they want to work in weddings, often what they mean is they want to work in events, which is a whole different kettle of fish. Yeah. And a lot more repeat business, whereas weddings, it's, you've got one shot, hopefully. So that would be my question. Like, why do you want to work in the wedding industry? Find your why. That's what I would say.
I think that's a great piece of advice. I don't think if anyone has actually answered with that when I've asked that question on this podcast, but it's so true. It's so true. It is not easy. And I'm not saying that to put anyone off. And in fact, that's what makes it so wonderful when you come out the other side, isn't it? You're like, damn, I worked hard for this. I do worry that the narrative on social media, and certainly from some of my colleagues in the world of coaching, is this concept of making things easy. And I'm definitely all about finding the path of least resistance, but some things are not easy, and some things you have to work hard. And I worry that there's this shift to like, it should all be super, super simple and easy. And it's actually not, is it?
No. And particularly when you're working with people who are unpredictable. Yeah. Like we all do things that we don't expect. And so, you can go along quite happily and have all your paperwork and be getting ready for the wedding. And then, for example, with me, I don't know, the wheel on my trolley might deflate. Like, that's a genuine disaster for me. Fine, just work around it. Yeah. And it's such a rewarding industry, but it is a tough industry to keep yourself going. The work is wonderful, but it's having that inner resilience and motivation. And actually, it's then a network, a community of people around you lift you up. Yeah. Whether that's with advice or going out for a coffee and just saying, do you know what, this is really crap what I'm going through at the moment. Yeah. And they go, oh, do you know what, that's horrible. Yeah, let's talk about it. Or they go, should I just buy you another coffee? And it's just having that friendship, but also those people you can say, what would you do in this situation? It's so important. And I think we don't, as sole traders, people who work on our own, we don't have those like coffee machine chats in the office. So we have to create them. We have to create those opportunities. And I think it is overlooked how important like taking someone out for a coffee is. Yeah,
I would agree with that. Let's talk about the club then, Harriet, because you've been a member from almost the very beginning. And I have seen, honestly, such a huge transformation in you, in your businesses. Now you have more than one. And yeah, tell us the experience of being a member.
Oh, it's the best thing ever. Like it really is. I didn't treat my business as a business until I joined the Wedding Business Club. I didn't even really think it was a business. I thought it was just kind of something I did. But I joined January 2020, and I'm so glad I joined pre-pandemic, because your approach of start from where you are made me realise that actually, in terms of, well, creating a network and my interactions with couples, I was doing a pretty good job. But whoa, there was loads more I needed to do. And I think that's been the transformation, in looking at it in that the 4 pillars that you talk about, and saying, okay, actually I'm doing really well in this area, this one needs a lot of work, and focusing on it. And I mean, everything, the way I work so much more efficiently than I used to. I've got rid of things off my to-do list, which has been so liberating. And I've made some wonderful friends, most of whom I've never actually met. But, you know, you message them on Instagram or Facebook, or you chat in the group, and it's just brilliant. It's a place that you can turn to if something bad or something good has happened, and you know you'll be supported and lifted no matter what.
Oh, well, that's very nice to hear. I'm so happy that that's your experience. And I don't say it lightly when you are a really valued member. You step in, you are honest, you share things that help lift others, you then go and help others, and that's just so important. Like, a community cannot work unless we have people like that. So thank you so much for being a member. We were talking just before, because as we record this, it's the 2nd of December, but a couple of weeks ago we had our first ever in-person live event. Last year we had to go online, which was still brilliant, and I had a great time. But this year, actual human contact in a room. There was hugging, there was tears. It was so good, right?
It was amazing. I remember walking in there. I was early, classic for me, and I was like, oh, I've just realised I literally know no one here. And I got really nervous, but then I met Paula first of all, actually, and we both said, oh, isn't it weird? We all know each other's names, but we don't know faces. And that's how everyone felt. And again, there was that commonality of, oh, this is all a bit awkward, but once we get past it, it's absolutely fine. And I mean, I met clients of mine that I've never met before. And that was just wonderful. And they were just as happy and exciting in real life as they were on Zoom. And the same with you. I was like, wow, Faye is literally just the same person in the flesh.
Sorry to disappoint.
Yeah, it's fine. She is human.
Yeah, it was so good. It was just a brilliant day. And, you know, I'm not saying that brilliance is mine. And I said it at the live event, you know, for something to be collectively awesome like that, it takes everyone. And so to have over 100 people in the room, all on the same page, different journeys, different spaces, different parts of the industry, but all on the same page, that, you know, looking for the good, looking for the opportunity, focusing on what we can do, and our individual superpowers. It was like the magic tonic I needed. Yeah,
the energy in the room was amazing. Like it was, I think it was like nothing I've ever experienced before. The only thing I've done like that is like an inset day where no one actually really wants to be there. so being there because you wanted to be there,
yeah,
and you had invested in yourself. I mean, I remember having breakfast that morning, and I wrote on my phone, like, a journaled, and just said like why I was investing in myself that day. And I just took that mentality with me, and I was on a high for days afterwards. Honestly, it was just wonderful. It really was. I can't praise the day enough, because yeah, everything was just perfect. I learned so much. I discovered new people. I made so many connections. I met you.
There's photographic evidence.
Oh, I know, it was amazing. And just everything about it. It was fantastic.
Well, thank you for making the effort to come. I do really appreciate it. I could talk to you all day, Harriet. I really could. I'm already planning next year's WBC Live. The wheels are already in motion. So at the very minimum, we'll have that day together next year. thank you so much for being a continued joyful member, and it's been glorious to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for your time. May your business flourish and grow in every way you want it to, and I wish you all the best for your amazing wedding next year as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Harriet.